The output for that looked like a drug dealer in a crime show. Welcome to the Compliant AF podcast, where healthcare compliance isn't just a checklist, it's a competitive advantage.
I'm Amy Wood, CEO of Copper Penny Consulting, a cybersecurity and HIPAA compliance geek who thinks encryption is awesome.
And I'm Kara Kelly, CEO of Clinical HR, fractional HR business partner and HR nerd who is weirdly passionate about employment policy.
If you're a dental or healthcare leader who's tired of check-the-box compliance and wants to actually understand what the rules are and how to build a practice that doesn't live in fear of audits or lawsuits,
you are in the right place. We are digging into the stuff that keeps practice leaders up at night.
We'll break down the boring, call out the BS, and share real strategies with a little snark and a whole lot of caffeine.
This isn't legal advice. We are not your lawyers.
We are two consultants who have seen way too many practices get in trouble because no one explained the rules in a way that actually made sense or made them care.
But since this is a compliance podcast, the content in this podcast or any associated clips for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, medical, tax, or regulatory advice. We are not attorneys. Clinical HR LLC and Copper Penny Consulting LLC are not legal firms, and listening to this podcast does not create a client relationship. Always consult a qualified professional advisor for guidance specific to your situation.
So buckle up, because boring compliance just got compliant AF.
I would also say the other big buzzword I'm hearing is AI. And I just want to clarify, we've all been using some AI in some way, shape, or form since the 1950s. We've just called it different things. So if you think AI is brand new, that's not the case. It's just publicly available, either free or low cost. And if you've ever seen an airbrush model in a magazine using Photoshop, that's AI. It's machine learning. It's, we used to call it, in the mid-90s, it's computer technology. And then we started hearing it was just technology. And then we started hearing, it's this fancy new machine learning. And now it's being called AI. And it's such a buzzword that marketing people have grasped onto it, just like I saw, maybe 10 years ago. People started using the words HIPAA compliant. That's not a thing, by the way. No government agency recognizes that. You're never 100% compliant. And I am ranting. I am sorry. But there are some things I got to get off my chest, some things that have been happening in the industry that really need to be looked at.
And I know we talked a little bit about this in one of our recent episodes that we did with Delane, which if you're listening and you haven't heard that episode, that's definitely a great one to go back and listen to.
It was an awesome one.
Yes, when it comes to coding and compliance there. Let's talk about it from a different perspective, though, talking about it as a buzzword and how are we using this in the practice from the employer-employee perspective, and what are the compliance issues there?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So you have to start with, should you or shouldn't you? And really go from there, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. And this is an ongoing problem because there are people that are untrained and are super excited about new stuff. And that's a really scary combination. So you have a question. I see it on your face.
From the technical perspective, why is it such a security risk?
So when you're looking at the programs themselves, there's usually a million ways that you can do something, but there's really only a small handful or sometimes even one way that you should be doing it in a compliant manner. But the technology does not stop you from doing it other ways.
Okay.
So there should be parameters to say, are you a healthcare entity? Here's your little bucket, your little lane that you can stick to, but it doesn't. And when people are adopting technology like this, it is incumbent on the responsible parties rather are the doctor or the compliance officer, especially when we're talking about HIPAA. They're the ones that have to vet the vendor, ask all the hard questions, have the questions they don't know they're supposed to ask. And, it gets really complex really fast. And that's my happy place. I love to ask all those questions and see what they're doing, what they're not doing. I know. Back in the days when even some of these vendors threatened to sue me just for simply asking. And now they're all coming to me saying, am I compliant? Can you tell me I'm compliant? Can you tell me I'm okay to say this to people? I'm like, absolutely.
They need
I
the
would
old
love to
stamp
do
of
that.
approval when they're
I've had
compliant.
so many people ask me to say that, and I'm like, that's not really a thing, but I would love to help you be compliant and be able to shout from the rooftops that you're taking this seriously. Because I think every company that interacts with a healthcare professional inside their practice, especially in their practice management system, they need to be above reproach. They need to be able to say that, hey, we've got our act together and we do that for you.
Especially if
So
they're trying to purport themselves as being HIPAA compliant, which we know is not really a thing. But if they're trying to make you feel secure by using language like that, using buzzwords like that, then what is it that they really need to be doing? Because, and that's the thing, I think some people hear that, oh, AI is dangerous. And that just is a fear mongering standpoint. So we know it can also be beneficial to productivity. It can be something that can be used properly and well and beneficial to your practice. What really is behind that, though? Like taking, ChatGPT is something everybody understands. For example, like we know, or some of us know, that there is a way to turn off the train the model setting, because everything you put in gets sucked into their brain of AI and spits back out somewhere else, which is part of where we have this risk of, if they've got patient data in there and those settings are not correct, that's where some of that risk lies. What else is there?
you
Like,
shouldn't be putting patient data in there in the first place. You should be generalizing your questions. Come on, people, use some common sense.
Amy, common sense isn't common.
I know that. I know that.
2025.
And not everyone is smart, but I disagree with that in dentistry because I have seen the amazing things that people learn and do and the kinds of procedures that they do and the stuff they have to learn. They are way smarter in dentistry than they give themselves credit for. This just isn't their lane, which is why they need people that can take a lot of it off their plate and say, here's your little lane to play in. This is what you're going to do, and I'm going to keep you safe. If you deviate from that, then you get Mean Amy. And Mean Amy is still okay, but she comes with white slides, 14-point font, and lots of bullet points. And we don't share stories. We get condescending Amy. And I don't want her either. She's not nice.
I always say I use my scary HR voice when I have to get to that point.
Well, that's what I'm doing with vendors right now. So to kind of clarify, every vendor that interacts with protected health information in any way, shape, or form, or has access to it, whether they should or shouldn't, they now become a business associate under HIPAA. So like your cleaning crew should not be a business associate under HIPAA, but they could come in contact with the patient information, which means it's your responsibility to put it up or lock it or lock the computers or shut the computers off. So, but your true business associates, like your appointment reminder companies and your vendor support for imaging and
Your CPA firm, because I know when
yeah,
some of those like
CPAs.
credit transactions come through, it'll say the patient's name in that transaction.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've even gone so far as to say, even sometimes attorneys will have to be. Sometimes bookkeepers do. It depends on who they are and what they have access to and if you can offset that risks in other ways. So, do they log in as the doctor into the practice management system? That's a terrible idea, by the way.
Oh, let's not even
I know, we could do a whole episode on just that.
Anyways. Yes, we could, because I've had recent issues with credit cards being handed to team members and not used appropriately. But the doctor is also partially culpable because they handed the credit card to somebody. There's a lot of that goes on, that, the things that we do for convenience, but not compliance.
Yeah. I kind of look at it as trust but verify everything. So under HIPAA, we have this zero trust model, which is we trust absolutely nobody until they prove their innocence, which, to be real, that's kind of the US way. You don't trust them until they can prove they're innocent, not innocent until proven guilty. It's the other way around.
Which is the reverse of what we want when we're trying to build culture with a team.
Yes.
We do want to trust each other, and we want our patients to trust us. And sometimes that trust does need to be given, and that we have some faith in people until they show us otherwise. But
HIPAA doesn't really give us the grace to do that. So we have to take it at face value and say, I need you to prove to me that you internally, vendor, are secure. And if you're going to use AI, is it something you're building internally or is it a third-party vendor? Because in HIPAA, we've got this thing with downstream vendors. We've got subcontractor business associates that vendor, as a business associate under HIPAA, is supposed to vet the same way the practice is vetting the vendor.
Are they doing that? Is there a percentage you might
No.
ballpark of ones that are versus aren't?
No. I know a small handful that actually do that, and most of them I've had to work with in some way, shape, or form. But the vast majority, they sign a contract and that's about it. They don't check to see if those vendors that they're hiring are having offshore workers, if they have proper cyber liability insurance, what they're accessing, what they can be restricted to have access to. I mean, it's kind of a hot mess. And because it's a buzzword and everybody is selling it, it's become that thing that's just synonymous with it's the latest bright, shiny object. And people aren't looking at it. And I don't want to be the naysayer here. I just want to clarify that. I am not being the fun hater, which is what I get called a lot. I got called the Grim Reaper once, but I choose to go with fun hater.
Wait, look, I'm over here with a shirt that says
I know.
HR ruins everything. So
It does. But we're just trying to create the boundaries so that you don't screw up and have to call us. So my advice to you, in this fourth quarter here would be to vet your vendors. If you don't know how, reach out. I'm happy to send you 13 questions to start with, very simple things. And if you don't believe them or they won't answer it, or they say 1,000 people trust us already, just believe us. Had one vendor tell me that. Or they spell HIPAA wrong. Those are all giant red flags. And you send them my way, and I am happy to yell at them instead of my family.
Well, and actually, that's what I was going to ask from a practicality standpoint. If they were trying to be more secure, what are some of those questions? Like, what should they be looking for, both when we're talking about AI as that buzzword, as well as just vetting vendors for security? Like you said, vendor signing a HIPAA BAA. Doesn't really, that's not where the story ends. Like,
not
we
enough.
should be
No.
doing some things, right? And so what should practices be looking for to make sure that the people that they're partnering with are secure? And what questions should they be asking?
So the first thing is, do they have themselves a HIPAA officer, whether it's privacy or security or both? Usually what I find is it's both, but the most common thing I see with vendors is they'll say, we are HIPAA compliant because our platform runs on Amazon Web Services or AWS. And I'm like, it could be HIPAA compliant within that platform, but you're missing all this other stuff. So if I were to give you a pie chart of HIPAA, it would be 20% technology, 20% physical security, and the rest is administrative. It's all paperwork. And they're looking at just the technology side. And this is a common problem with tech people. And it's not really a problem. It's just a difference of view and opinion and kind of like what their viewpoint is. And so what ends up happening is you get people that are trying to accomplish the same thing, but they're having two very different conversations. And I'm married to an IT guy. So trust me, we have had these roundabout conversations where I'm over here saying, we're saying the same dang thing. Can you stop it? Like, we're trying here. And he's like, well, but I could do it this way and this way and this way. And I'm over here saying, but should you do it that way? No, we should do it this way. This is the way we need to do it. And that's why we don't work together anymore. So that's a large reason why we don't work together anymore.
So this compliance officer, this privacy protection, whatever you want to call it, officer, the person that's supposed to be designated at their vendors, the vendors that they're using, what is the standard for that? Is there a certification for this? Is there a certain
There's some. Yeah. So usually when I look at that, for a vendor that is integrating with a practice management system, if they have what's called a SOC 2 certification, that is kind of the gold standard for technology. It also goes through a lot of SOC and then Roman numeral 2. Not 2, like the
number.
Not the numerical
Yeah.
2, the Roman numeral 2.
Roman numeral 2. And there's plenty of places vendors can get that. Yeah, I have recommendations. Reach out to me. I'm happy to make introductions. And with practices don't need this. The vendors that you integrate with need that. And it can be pricey, it can be time consuming, but it's very thorough. So when I'm vetting a vendor, if they have that, I'm like, cool, you have the gold standard. I don't have to ask many more questions. But if they don't have that, that's when I start asking, who's your HIPAA officer? Where's your data located? Who else has access to it? How do you gain access to the practice? Do you have unattended remote access agents, which I just found out a vendor is doing that now with people that are in another country? And I'm like, oh, no, we can't do that. That's not safe or secure or recommended. And the vendor's like, but I got to get stuff done after hours. And I'm like, but we can still do that during daytime. We can just schedule the reboots of the servers after. Like, I ran an IT company. Don't question on this. I know how you can do this without doing the shady stuff you're doing.
Okay, I just had like 3 more questions that just popped up now.
I know. And we got as much time as you want. I just had all my tea. So
We can roll and not have other questions. The first one's going to be multi-location practices. If they have an on-site or at corporate hub or whatever have you IT provider, is this SOC 2 certification something that they should have or invest in for this person?
Possibly, but I would, for a situation like that, which I actually have with internal IT, you tend to have blinders on. So you can only see what's in your ecosphere. You only see what's in your bubble. And you generally don't see your blind spots. Having someone that's external is going to do their job, which is to find and exploit all your weaknesses. Kind of like kids do. They do. And really, that's when you can start diving in and finding. I mean, that's what I do for practices. I don't do it as much for vendors, but I'll like make some recommendations. That's not usually my role. I just ask a bunch of questions and give some recommendations and make some introductions. But with practices, that's my job, is to literally try to be the bad guy and find all the weaknesses and vulnerabilities and then try to see how can I exploit this as much as possible. And then here's what we're going to do to close that gap.
Yeah, I can understand that one from an HR perspective. I am the one that has to be the killjoy sometimes. That
fun hater. We go with fun hater.
Yes, there's that. But I've literally had a practice tell me that I always say no. I'm like, yes, it's because I'm trying to protect you. Like, they came at me with,
you're doing it wrong.
Like, this particular one, they came out with the same question. It was workers' comp. And I never like working with practices that try to utilize my skill set and my knowledge base to get around the law. Like, I'm not an attorney. I don't provide legal advice. I do provide information, obviously, guidance for clients that actually have a client relationship with me. I want to help them through a situation and find the best possible solution for them. But whenever I have a practice that will come back and say something like, I have an employee on workers' comp, I think they're milking it. Can I do this? No. Can I? Well, what about this one? Well, how about, and then a couple days later, come back with a whole other solution where they're just trying to get rid of this person who may or may not, because remember, everybody's perspective is their reality. And so they're saying that this employee is milking the clock may or may not be true. I have a limited amount of information because I'm only hearing one side unless I'm, the one conducting an internal investigation. But I can advise them that this is not the best time because there can be a retaliation issue. And if they keep coming back of like, what if I did it this way? Could we fire her? That no. I don't like to be that person, but at the same time, that's part of why people hire me, is so that I can, like you said, see their blind spots and see, why is this not a great idea? But yes, sometimes, and that was one of those cases, I have to be the person that says no. And they're like, you always say no. I'm like, I try to provide other solutions and you don't want them, and you come back with a different way to do the exact same thing. Yes, I'm going to keep saying no. I'm trying to protect you. Swear.
Because the answer is no. If at first you don't succeed, try doing it the way mom told you to the first time. It's a beautiful phrase and it works in so many situations.
Agreed. And so, yes, that I understand 100% being that person, that I'm always trying to look for what is the worst that could possibly happen. And it's not because I'm
Yeah.
pessimistic. It's because I have seen some of the worst that can possibly happen, and I'm trying to prevent that from happening to you.
Same.
So, but I have to be in that mentality of like, these are the negative things that can happen. And here's the 16 different reasons why you shouldn't do this, or you should be doing this instead. And that's, I think the clients that I work with, long term, I think they appreciate that aspect. I know that's one of the things that I like. I consider it risk management to some level. Whenever it comes to team members, more people, more problems, and humans are going to human. So we sometimes have to have that mentality, same as with IT and HIPAA and everything else when it comes to protecting the practice. That's what we do. That's why we have compliance.
And people will continue to not listen, sadly, and we will just continue to provide the advice. Yeah, as far as AI goes at this point, I'll kind of circle back on that. Proceed with caution. I would say at this point, it is not your friend, it is not your foe, it is not your frenemy. It's a little bit of all of them at this point. So, it is.
What is caution?
Great. Caution looks like if you're going to use ChatGPT, ask it to write template letters. Ask it to, like, I did this the other day. I said, these are all the mean, angry words I want to say because my menopause rage is raging out of control today. And how do I say this in a nice, clean, professional way? I didn't put in any other context. I just said, translate this into professional tone. And it did. And I made some edits to it and I modified it, but it kind of gave me a really good framework on what I was trying to go for. And I think too many people have become dependent on copy and paste and
without redacting.
Yeah. Yeah, reword it in your own words. You can say that, no problem. Now, the thing that irritates me is I do use a lot of hyphens and double dashes in my writing because my ADHD brain will just like go off the rails in little side quests in my writing. And so I've been using that for a long time. And I actually had someone come back to me from a magazine I was writing for and said, did you copy this from ChatGPT? I'm like, no, go and look at all my other work. I use the dashes all the time, way before it was cool.
So one of the articles I recently submitted, I actually wrote it in Google Docs so that I could send them the link to the document and you could see that it was actually written, not copied and pasted into it.
Nice.
So that you could see the different versions of it and whatnot. So you use ChatGPT to generate ideas, but you don't write it in word for word. And yeah, I suppose I could have had ChatGPT write something and I type it in word for word, but that is not what I did. And if you go back and check the different versions from the couple of different hours I spent working on it, days I spent working on it, you will see that there were multiple revisions over that period. So for me, that's like one of the ways that I'm safeguarding myself whenever somebody's asking, give me something that is not AI generated, is I make sure that it's done in something that can track me actually typing things in. ChatGPT is one example of AI being used that can be insecure. What are some others? I know we have phones. Okay.
Phones.
What are some ways, how can they work with companies and make sure that they're being secure when it comes to phones?
So, I know of some things with phones. So I'm not going to name names because that's not what we do here. We want everyone to be safe and secure and compliant. But I know there are some business phone systems that have access in dentistry. And I know of one that will not sign a business associate agreement. They claim that they are a conduit under HIPAA because they're just a phone system. But I disagree because the second it touches the practice management system, it has become a HIPAA business associate. Not to mention that there are other programs and resources that are sold under that company as well that are like forms and analytics and things like that.
If they're recording patient conversations, is that not patient data?
Yep. And transposing it and text messages. And yeah, so it's one of those shady areas of, I just don't want to do this. That sounds expensive. That sounds like I'm going to have to pay for stuff to be changed. So I know that's one. Another one I know uses a third-party system. They are actually trying. It's a very popular one in dentistry, and but there's not a lot of information yet coming out as to how it interacts, what it does. And even recently, in the last few months, there was an article about a DSO being sued for wiretapping fraud because the voice over IP or VoIP phone system, internet phones essentially, that system they were using did not notify the callers that their system was using AI for transcription, for call movement throughout their system, their phone tree system. And they were using old wiretapping laws as the basis of their lawsuit. So that has not gone much further. All we know is that the lawsuit has happened. I'm not going to name names about who the DSO was or who the VoIP provider was, but that there are things where the laws have not caught up to the technology. And the technology changes so fast that by the time you put laws and guidance out, it's already changed. I mean, I just wrote an article on this, and 2 weeks since I wrote it before it goes to press, I had to go and modify 3 things because there's new technology that has come out, new offerings that are coming out. And it's like, I keep up on that stuff, but even now I'm like, dude, slow down. I'm not as young as I once was.
I feel like we have to disclaim every time we put something out there that like, this is the information per this publication date. And it
Yeah.
and that's honestly, I felt that way during the C period during 2020,
Yeah.
that, disease that shall not be named, where every time I was doing a presentation around, Families versus Coronavirus Response Act, FCRA, or DOL was putting out, or IRS was putting out, or anything else that was attached to it, I would always say, this may change literally by the time I get off the call. This is the information as of this morning. I used to like to be really super prepared for presentations, and I would make sure that they were ready to go a week in advance at least. I stopped doing that because I started waking up in the mornings that I was doing a presentation that afternoon, and everything had changed. So I'm like the hour before still putting stuff in and then disclaiming myself during that conversation. And so it feels like that again, where every time we write something, every time we say something, it's this is what is correct in the moment or now as of the
I
date
had
of
the
publication.
same problem during that first year because everybody wanted to use telehealth platforms, and it was the first time ever in Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights history that they ever named names. They don't name vendors. They keep it very vague on purpose. And this was the first time that they had said, you can use these healthcare platforms, Zoom for healthcare and Doxy and, all these other ones that they would say. And then they had a middle category of, you may use these on a one-off basis. And then they had like, no, we don't use Facebook Messenger, and we don't use Twitch, and we don't do these things in public forums. You get your patients to call you. And dentistry was one of those, like, you kind of had to come in for a lot of things, for emergencies. Like, if a patient was calling you, it was because something was really bad or they needed meds. And you had to be cautious with that too, because, DEA compliance.
So circling back to phones and some of the AI that's used there, that's something that we also have to deal with on the HR side, because there are some of these systems that are not only capturing the recording and providing transcripts, but they're providing an analysis on the call, on what was said, an analysis of what the employee could or couldn't do differently. And I feel like that has the potential for employers in healthcare or otherwise to look at those recommendations and potentially hold it against the team member. AI is biased. I've seen a lot of this. I know you have as well. AI is only as good as the person that trained it, and it's only as good as what you put into it. And so there's a lot of examples I could share of how that bias appears in AI. And if AI is biased to somebody with an accent, for example, and they're making recommendations that end up getting that person disciplined and or terminated, and it was because of those recommendations by the AI, not because anybody actually had human eyes on AI or actually listened to the phone call before they made those decisions, those employment decisions, then that has the potential to come back on the employer as an issue. We've seen that before in the last couple of decades, actually, where you said, AI has been being used. It's been being used in HR for years as well. And one of the prime examples would be in the hiring process, where you have hiring platforms that are accepting applications and flagging applications saying that, oh, these are the top candidates for this batch. and nobody looks any deeper, and it ends up being discriminatory, inadvertently. Like, if they're not intentionally discriminating, but that's how some of the algorithms
Right.
operate. And so it ends up being unintentionally discriminatory. And so it's on the business that's using that program, not the program creator, to verify and ensure that that's actually a valid indicator of success, to ensure that this is a valid selection process, and that they're really pulling people who are top candidates. And so I know that there are some jobs that get thousands of applications, and it's hard to sift through them all, but we have to have some level of human eyes on AI, because there is some liability from that perspective on the HR side. And that's always something that you want to get those vetted. You want to get your attorney involved potentially, your employment law attorney, your management side employment law attorney specifically, not the guy that wrote the real estate contracts.
Yes, you need specialists in this, is what I've found.
Yeah, you do.
With all of these things, we even specialize. We deal with dental consultants and practice consultants, and the reality is we are hyper focused on these smaller markets. We want to make sure we're giving accurate information. And I know, Kara, you spend a lot of time at continuing education for your certifications. Same for me. I am involved in various government groups, and I get latest information all the time. And it's exhausting. It's really exhausting.
We also spend time testing these platforms ourselves.
Yes.
Like, whenever I say I can give you examples of how AI is biased, when, let's see, do you recall I know you do because I made you one, the superhero or the...
Yes. I didn't want to do it, but I let you do it for me.
Yes, I did. I was doing that actually for several people because, it was a trend for 5 seconds that somebody had said, here's the prompt that'll generate a superhero. Well, garbage in, garbage out. And the prompt was fine, but I made one that was better, that was getting more realistic results. And I had several people asking if I would create their little superhero action figure for them. And so I was, taking a couple of different pictures and their logos that they gave to me so that I could put on this output. Well, one of the friends of mine that I was doing this for was a black male, very tall black male. And whenever I put his information in, put his pictures in and his logo in, the output for that looked like a drug dealer in a crime show. I'm not kidding.
That's awful.
It was awful. I had to specifically go back in and tell the platforms, ChatGPT, I had to tell ChatGPT to have a smiling, friendly, or I can't remember the exact phrasing, but to specifically identify what expression should be on this person's face. At that point, it produced something that was more realistic and more what we were going for. But I was really not terribly surprised, because I know AI was biased, but was surprised that it was so blatant, that like everybody else I was putting through, it was this like shiny, happy action figure. And I had to specifically go and tell AI to put a smile on this person's face, because the first couple of
ChatGPT is racist. Awesome. That's good to know.
I was using the word bias, but yes, there was some issues there. So
Clearly.
you have to be aware of these things, that like just because everybody's using it does not mean that it's a valid program for what you're trying to accomplish. And there are bias in AI, just like there's bias on humans, because humans created AI. I know. Shocking.
And humans are fallible. I mean, I did this as a test. I said, write a treatment plan for a tooth extraction and or post-treatment instructions, just to see what it would say. And it told the patient to use Plaque Away RX. And I'm like, Google, oh, that's not a thing. Okay, cool. Because I'm like, that doesn't sound legit.
That's hilarious. I know
Yeah.
it hallucinates, and in a lot of it, you have to look at where it's pulling the data, and different platforms are going to pull from different locations. I have this conversation whenever I coach other HR consultants on building their businesses and their branding and things of that nature. I do it when I talk to speakers about, how to get yourself found on AI, which is a whole thing that we won't dive into. That's far more technical than I want to get into. But what you're looking at is like, where is it pulling the data? Well, for a while, I would type in like, what is full-time employment in New Jersey? And it would pull up 25 hours. That's not correct, but it was pulling it off of a PDF that had been uploaded to a disability insurance site that for that particular policy, it considered a small employer, a certain head count, including their full-time team members. And they put that standard at 25 hours or higher. Well, I had a number of clients in New Jersey, practices in New Jersey, that they had team members that said, hey, I think I'm supposed to be full-time. I think I'm owed benefits because Google is telling me that it's 25 hours in New Jersey. I'm like, no, that's not right. And I went to go figure out, like, why is it saying that? That's why it was saying it. I finally found the form and I'm like, okay, let me set the record straight. It's not doing that now. It has corrected itself. But for the while it was.
But
getting
still,
that
the
information.
damage is done.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I had this with HIPAA for a long time. I remember when I first started talking about HIPAA, it was really intended to upsell my IT contracts so that we were doing a minimum standard for security across the board. And I remember one doctor pushed back and said, well, I found this document from CMS, from Center for Medicare Services. And I was like, okay, well, this was written in 2003. This is not 2003. This is like 10 years later. And it says that unless you are doing electronic records, HIPAA does not apply to you. Well, there was a law as part of the security rule in 2009. In between those two timeframes, from when he got this document for 2003 and what I was talking to him in 2013, in between there, this whole new law that came out that basically said, yes, that's true, unless you have digital data on patients in a computer, on a thumb drive, on a disk, by email, basically everything this practice was doing. And I said, okay, yes, but, and the but is very big. And here's what that really means. And so I remember we had asked him, okay, so let's have a real conversation. Let's be practical here. Would you or wouldn't you? This is kind of there's 5 people on one railroad track, and like the ethical question. Would you or wouldn't you take boxes of your paper records and go put them out on the front stoop of your office? Because that's essentially what you're telling your patients and everyone else in your practice that you're willing to do as far as securing those records.
That's scary.
Because they're now digital.
Yeah, that's a
yeah. And the doctor was like, all right, touche. I'll say yes. And still a client.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I've seen things like that. I've also seen things when it comes to writing employment policy. Like, where is it pulling the data from? It's not often pulling it from the Department of Labor website. Believe me, I have tried. This is another one that I keep constantly testing of, like, can it write policies for handbooks? Could you just get your whole handbook from Perplexity or ChatGPT or Grok or whatever? The answer right now is no. I had it attempt to write me a in-house dental policy a couple of months ago, and it spit out something that was basically insurance fraud, where it was saying that it would accept the employee's insurance and then waive their portion so that they didn't have to pay it, which we all in dentistry know that's not a thing.
No.
You can't do that. Not if you're in network. So no, we can't do that. That's what it spit out. And there's been other things of that nature too. Like, I have had other handbooks that I've had it, analyze for me to try to tell me if there's something that's not compliant. And thank goodness I actually put human eyes on AI and didn't just copy and paste that over to the client to be like, well, this is what's wrong with your handbook. Yeah. It was telling me things that it hallucinated. It was telling me things that were actually there, but were phrased a different way that it said was missing. And when I went and actually, I was like, there's no way they're missing that. And I went in and I looked, and it did not it did not pull it correctly. And so it's not quite to the point that it can really analyze these types of things. And I mean, just for clarification, of course, I'm redacting things before I put it in there. This is not like me sharing practice data. This is me taking somebody's policy and taking it even in chunks, because I know it really can't go through that much data at one point. Taking it in chunks and taking it redacted and saying, compare this to this other that I know is correct, that is part of one of my template set that I get from my databases, and tell me, like, what is missing. And it's not there yet. It may be eventually, but right now it's really not there yet. And so when it comes to drafting your policies for your practice, whether that's HIPAA policies or cybersecurity SOPs or employee handbook policies, 100% get your human eyes on AI.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Otherwise, it'll say dumb things like plaque away RX or, just do it. It's fine. Just sign a BAA. You'll be fine. Because that's the literature that's out there for all these years. And even with the government information that's available is kind of vague about the whole due diligence aspect of vendor vetting. But what I've found now is that a lot of the insurance companies that will provide even general liability insurance, not just malpractice or even definitely malpractice, but I'm seeing it most definitely in cyber liability insurance. You have to have certain things in place, including due diligence of your vendors, in order to get this insurance to cover you on anything. So when and
no.
if you
told me
got
about
another
that. I
question.
was very surprised. You were basically, and I understand it. It's like if you go and park your car in a dark alley and leave the keys in it, there's some level of assisted theft there. Like if someone comes and steals the car, like you're complicit to some extent because you basically left it open. And so I get it, but it was just really surprising that like it's not just going to cover everything that could possibly happen. If you've not taken those steps, I get it. Insurance
It's
companies
not a get out of jail free, you're a stupid person kind of coverage. Okay. What is a statistic? Like every day someone breaks 8 laws unknowingly.
Something like that.
Isn't it something like that? I mean, like, I totally blow stop signs in parking lots. I think they're stupid. But, and if any cops are listening, do not follow me. I will stop if I see you. But in general, like, nobody's there. It's an empty parking lot for the most part. And so anyway, the general consensus on it is we're just not going to do what we're supposed to do.
No, it's not possible for us to always be 100% perfect all of the time. But it is possible for us to at least demonstrate that we are taking appropriate steps and making the attempt to be compliant so that we can get covered in the event of like cybersecurity risk if you've got that insurance that does cover you. But if you're not taking those steps, if you're not doing your basics, it's just like anything else that we train on. That's your CYA. That's your I was really, truly trying.
And that's a whole nother topic to talk about insurances. And cyber insurance is one of those beasts that if you don't answer the questions correctly, or they give you a vague question and you answer it incorrectly, like, do you run all updates? Do you have multi-factor authentication on everything? Like, that's a very vague question, and it's not applicable everywhere. And not everything can be updated.
Right.
So it's just, it's one of those things that getting it is not as easy as it once was, and then maintaining it and retaining it is not as easy as it once was. And now that things are changing, the insurance companies are modifying their questionnaires and their renewals very differently than they were even just 2 years ago.
Oh, I foresee us bringing a featured expert who's an insurance.
Oh yeah, I've got one. I've got 2.
We may need a panel.
Yeah. I mean, I've got an expert in cyber insurance, and I've got another one in dental insurances. Like, yeah, this is one of those things that I'm probably overinsured, but I also have weird things that happen to me, so I'm not taking any chances.
Well, that is a great attitude to have. I know we are at the end of our time, and I appreciate you, listeners, for hanging out with us while we nerd out on compliance. Definitely come back for more. And in the meantime, stay compliant AF.